Part 1. Blood in the Rocks. I couldn't tell you what day it was. Might have been a Tuesday. Might have been the tail end of forever. Out here in the Mogollon Rim country, the sun just keeps rising and setting, and the calendar burns along with everything else you used to own. Days don't bother with names anymore. They just spill one into the next, slow and red as whiskey poured into creek water. But I remember her eyes, dark as sin, staring up at me from that bear trap with enough hate to burn down Tennessee. She had a knife in her hand, blood soaking the sand around her leg, and she was deciding whether to kill me or herself first. Hell, she was sharp. Most folks would have been bawling and pleading. She just stared like I was the Reaper himself, riding up on horseback, and maybe that day I was. You ever save someone's life and have it turn into a wedding? Neither had I. Not until that day in '73. The buck I'd been tracking led me to her. Funny how things work. I was following blood through the rocks, thinking about dinner, when I heard breathing. Wrong kind of breathing. The kind that comes when pain's been gnawing on you for hours and you're too stubborn to quit. She was sprawled between two red boulders, one leg bent wrong where the trap had her. Steel teeth buried deep, chain bolted to a rock half the size of a horse. This wasn't for catching coyotes. This was for catching people. I'd seen those traps before. Comancheros used them. Men with Apache blood and Spanish names who made their living stealing Apache women and children, selling them south of the border. Domestic slaves, they called them. We both knew what they really were. The Arizona sun was beating down like a hammer on an anvil. July heat that makes the air shimmer and dance. Ponderosa pines dotted the higher ridges, their scent mixing with sage and something else. Blood. Fear. The particular smell of suffering that any hunter knows. She said something in Apache when I came close. Sharp warning. Her knife hand was shaking, but her eyes were steady. I'd seen men face firing squads with less composure. Inda. Inda. I knew that word. White man. She was calling me white man, and it wasn't a friendly greeting. Easy, I said, keeping my hands visible. I'm not here to hurt you. She said something else that probably translated to, go to hell or I'll gut you where you stand. But her body was giving out. Blood loss and infection were doing what that trap couldn't finish. I knelt down beside her, moving slow. The trap was stiff, crusted with old blood. Not her blood. Someone else's. The thought made my stomach turn. How many people had this thing caught? How many had died waiting for men who never planned to let them go? While I worked the mechanism, I thought about riding away. Thought about how much easier my life would be if I just left her there. Then I thought about my daughter, Rose, 7 years old when the plague took her. Same age this woman might have had a child if the world had been different. My hands kept moving. When those jaws opened, she gasped. First real sound of pain she'd made. The trap released with a metallic groan that echoed off the canyon walls. I wrapped my bandana around her calf, cinched it tight. The bleeding slowed but didn't stop. She needed clean water, shelter, time. 3 things this territory didn't give freely. "Can you ride?" I asked. She looked at me like I was stupid. Probably was, but she let me lift her onto my horse, and that told me something. She was practical enough to accept help from a man she'd probably kill if she had the strength. We rode west toward a spring I knew, her weight heavy against my chest, her blood soaking through my shirt. Behind us, I saw what I'd been afraid of. Fresh tracks. 4 horses, all shod. The men who set that trap were still close. I pushed the horse harder. The cave wasn't much, just an overhang in the red rock with enough depth to hide a horse and 2 people. But it had water seeping from a crack in the stone, and more importantly, it had only one entrance I could watch. Inside, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. Cool shadows, the smell of damp stone and earth. I helped her down, eased her against the cave wall. She didn't make a sound, but sweat beaded on her forehead. Her skin was hot to the touch. I built a small fire, kept it low and smokeless. The kind of fire you make when you don't want to be found. Then I heated water in my tin cup and started cleaning the wound. She watched me the whole time, never took her eyes off my face, like she was reading a book she didn't trust. I pulled out my coffee pouch, the one luxury I still carried from my old life. Ground beans I'd bought in Fort Apache 2 months back. I made it strong and bitter, the way I liked it, and offered her the cup. She sniffed it, surprised. "Bilagana coffee," she said. "White man coffee." She took a sip and her face scrunched up. Bitter. I smiled for the first time in I don't know how long. "Ain't supposed to be sweet, ma'am." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, but close. A recognition that we were two human beings sharing a moment instead of predator and prey. Night fell fast in the canyon. 1 minute the sky was blue, the next it was black and filled with more stars than seemed possible. I sat near the cave entrance, rifle across my knees, watching the darkness for movement. Behind me I could hear her breathing change, getting rougher. The fever was setting in, infection taking hold despite my cleaning. I'd seen it before. Seen men lose legs, lose lives, to wounds that looked smaller than hers. I heated my knife in the fire until the blade glowed red, walked back to where she lay. "This is gonna hurt," I said. I gave her a piece of leather to bite down on. She took it without question, met my eyes, and nodded once. I cut into the wound, drained the poison that had been building there. She bit down hard on that leather, eyes locked on mine, and didn't make a sound. Not one. Just sweat pouring down her face, muscles rigid with pain, but silent as stone. When it was over, she passed out. I bandaged her leg properly this time, using strips torn from my spare shirt. Then I sat back against the cave wall and wondered what the hell I was doing. Wondered if the men who set that trap were worth killing over. Wondered if she'd thank me or curse me when she woke up. In the firelight, I could see her face clearly for the first time. Strong features, a small scar on her chin from some childhood accident. Her hair was long and black, spreading across the cave floor like spilled ink. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with softness, all edges and strength and survival. I thought about Martha, my wife, dead 4 years now, buried in Missouri dirt alongside our daughter. I'd been away playing soldier in a blue coat when the fever took them both. Came home to ashes and graves and a silence so loud it drove me west. 4 years of trying to outrun the guilt. 4 years of waking up to nothing. This woman, this Apache woman bleeding on my cave floor, was the first person I'd touched in all that time. The first person I'd chosen to help instead of avoid. Morning came gray and uncertain. Dawn light filtering through the cave mouth, turning everything soft and silver. She was awake when I opened my eyes, watching me again. "My name is Dahana," she said. Her English was accented but clear. "Elijah," I said. "Folks call me Eli." She studied me for a long moment. "You are sad man, Elijah." It wasn't a question, just an observation, simple and true as rain. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She asked for water and I gave it to her. Asked if she could walk and she tried, made it 3 steps before her leg gave out. I caught her before she fell. "We can't stay here," I said. "Your people, where are they?" She pointed west. 10 miles, maybe more, through the high country. "Can you ride if I get you on the horse?" She nodded. We left at dusk, when the shadows were long and the heat had broken. "Apache don't hunt much in daylight," she'd told me. "The men who trapped me, they're white and Mexican. They move during the day. We move at night." Smart woman. We picked our way through the rocks as the stars came out, her arms wrapped around my waist, her head resting against my back. Every so often she'd murmur something in Apache, directions maybe, or prayers. I couldn't tell which. The country up here was different from down below. Ponderosa pine gave way to Douglas fir. The air smelled of resin and cold stone. We were high enough that my breath made clouds in the moonlight. Just before dawn on the 3rd day, we crested a ridge and looked down into a hidden valley. 30 wickiups scattered across the grassland, small and portable, the kind you could pack up and move in an hour if the army came calling. That's when they found us. 1 minute the trail was empty. The next, 12 Apache warriors materialized from the rocks like smoke given form. They moved without sound, rifles and bows ready, faces painted for war. I stopped the horse, held my hands up, rifle left in the scabbard. Fighting would have been suicide, and more importantly, it would have gotten Dahana killed. The man who led them was old, 60 at least, but he moved like water over stone. He wore a buckskin shirt decorated with medicine symbols, and he carried a rifle that had seen better days. When he saw Dahana sitting behind me on the horse, something crossed his face. Relief, then anger. He said something in Apache. Dahana answered. They went back and forth while I sat there like a fence post, knowing my life was being decided in a language I barely understood. Finally he turned to me. His English was accented but clear. "You touched my daughter." The way he said it made my blood cold. Not angry, just measuring. Like he was weighing my soul on a scale I couldn't see. "I treated her wounds," I said. "Nothing else. You saved her life. Anyone would have." "No." He shook his head slowly. "Most men would not. Most men would leave her to die or worse." His eyes held mine. "You stayed with her for 3 days. You protected her from the slavers. You gave her water, treated her wounds, kept her warm." He paused, and in that pause I felt the weight of something enormous shifting. "By our law, you have responsibility now." Dahana said something sharp from behind me. He raised a hand, silenced her. "I am Cocheta," he said, "medicine man of the Chiricahua. This is my eldest daughter. She is widow. 2 years ago, soldiers killed her husband while she watched." He studied me like I was a book he was reading, turning pages he'd seen before. "The men who trapped her," he continued, "Vicente Salazar and his Comancheros. You know this name?" I'd heard it, whispered in trading posts and army forts. A half-Spanish, half-Comanche slave trader who'd been operating in the territory for years. They said he'd taken 20 Apache women in 1870 and sold them in Chihuahua. Not one survived. "I know it," I said. "He is still here, still hunting, still taking our women, our children." Cocheta's face hardened. "Among our people, when a man saves a widow's life, touches her body to heal her, spends days alone with her, he takes on obligation. He must provide for her, protect her, live with her family." The words hit me square in the chest. "You're saying I have to marry her. I am saying you already have. You just don't know it yet." He gestured at Dahana. "She is medicine woman, healer, carries sacred knowledge. She cannot be left without protection. You understand what those men wanted her for?" I understood. Comancheros didn't just take Apache women for domestic work. They took them for other things, things I won't say out loud. "And if I refuse?" I asked. "Then you dishonor her. Make her untouchable to other men. She becomes burden on family, cannot remarry, loses place in community." His face hardened further. "We will not kill you, but you will carry that knowing for rest of your life." I looked at Dahana. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't read, not pleading, not angry, just waiting. "What do you want?" I asked her directly. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What I want does not matter. It matters to me." That got a reaction. Her eyes widened just slightly. Behind me, Cocheta made a small sound that might have been approval. Dahana spoke carefully. "Those men who trapped me, they are still out there. They hunt my people. They take women and children." She paused, and her gaze held mine. "If you marry me, you become part of my family, part of my tribe. You help protect us." Another pause, longer this time. "Or you can leave. Go back to whatever you were running from. Stay alone. Stay safe." That word, safe. It sat there ugly between us, and she knew it. She'd read me like a track in soft mud. 4 years of waking up to nothing. 4 years of trying to outrun the smell of that burned house, those 2 graves in Missouri. Couldn't do it. Couldn't outrun what I'd lost. But maybe I could run towards something instead. "I'll stay," I said. "Not because of your law, because I owe her." Cocheta nodded once. "Reason does not matter. Action does." He turned to his warriors, spoke quickly in Apache. They lowered their weapons but didn't relax. Still watching me, still deciding if I was threat or ally. "Come," Cocheta said. "We talk more in camp." The rancheria wasn't what I expected. No big teepees, no war camp, just small wickiups scattered across the protected valley, easy to move, easy to abandon if soldiers came. Practical, like everything else about these people. They put me in Dahana's family wickiup. Not with her exactly. I slept in the guest section, separated by a deerskin partition, close enough to hear her breathe at night, close enough to lie awake wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. The Apache women watched me with curiosity. One of them asked Dahana something that made her laugh. First time I'd heard that sound. "She wants to know if you can cook," Dahana translated. "Some. Coffee and beans mostly. Apache men help their wives cook. You'll need to learn." The way she said wives, not theoretical, not future tense, present, like it was already decided, already done, and we were just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. That first night, lying on a woven mat with a thin blanket, I heard her moving beyond the partition. Soft sounds, the rustle of fabric, the creak of the wickiup frame settling. "Elijah?" Her voice, quiet in the darkness. "Yeah? Thank you. For not running." I stared at the curved ceiling, watching shadows dance in the firelight that leaked through gaps in the deerskin. "Nowhere to run to anyway," I said. Silence. Then, "That is a sad thing to say." "Maybe. But it's true." More silence, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Softer maybe, or just more honest. "I think we are same, you and me. Both running from ghosts." I closed my eyes. "Yeah, maybe we are." Outside I could hear the rancheria settling in for the night. Dogs barking in the distance. The low murmur of voices around fires. The sound of people living their lives despite everything trying to kill them. For the first time in 4 years, I didn't dream of those Missouri graves. Didn't wake up wishing a bullet had found me during the war. I just slept. And when morning came, when I smelled cornbread cooking and heard Dahana moving around our shared space, something in my chest loosened just slightly. Not hope exactly, not redemption, just the faint possibility that maybe, just maybe, being alive might not be the worst thing that ever happened to me. Part 2. Hands that learn. The first week passed like water over stone, slow, persistent, wearing away at the edges of who I'd been. Living with the Apache wasn't what I expected. There were no grand ceremonies, no formal declarations, just life, simple and complex all at once. Days filled with small tasks that added up to survival. Dahana taught me how to move through the wickiup without making the support poles creak. How to sit so the smoke from the fire wouldn't choke you. Which plants to gather for medicine and which ones would kill you if you touched them wrong. She showed me how to make tortillas, her hands guiding mine through the motions. Press, turn, flatten. The dough was warm and alive under my palms. When her fingers touched mine to correct my grip, we both felt it. A spark of something neither of us was ready to name. She pulled back quick, went to her side of the workspace. We didn't talk about it. Apache men help their wives cook, she'd said that first morning, not as a joke, as fact. So I learned to grind corn and shape bread and tend a fire that gave heat without smoke. Learned that silence wasn't uncomfortable here, it was just another way of talking. The other women watched us with knowing eyes. They'd smile when Dahana's cheeks colored, when I'd catch her looking at me across the fire. But they never said anything, just went about their business, weaving baskets and tanning hides and raising children in a world that wanted them dead. On the fourth day, I met Cale. He was 11 years old, all knobby knees and serious eyes. Orphaned 2 years back when tuberculosis took his parents. Now he lived with Dahana's family, more shadow than boy, always watching from a distance. He followed me when I went to check my horse. Didn't say anything, just trailed 10 feet behind like a cautious deer. "You coming or just looking?" I asked without turning around. He jumped, startled that I'd noticed him. I was just... His English was hesitant, learned from traders maybe, just watching. "Well, come on then. Watching's easier up close." He crept forward, eyes fixed on my rifle leaning against the tree. "That's a Sharps," he said. "50 caliber. You know guns?" "My father taught me." "Before?" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. I picked up the rifle, checked the action, made it safe, handed it to him. He took it like it was made of glass and gold. "Heavy," he said. "That's what makes it accurate. Weight steadies your aim." His face lit up in a way that punched straight through my chest. Same expression Rose used to get when I'd show her something new. Same wonder and hunger to learn. "Can you teach me? To shoot like you?" From across the camp I heard Dahana call out, "Cale, don't bother him." But I was already nodding. "It's okay," I called back. Then to Cale, "Meet me at sunrise. We'll start with tracking." The boy's smile could have lit up the whole canyon. That evening, Dahana and I sat on opposite sides of the fire. She was grinding herbs. I was cleaning my rifle. Comfortable silence, the kind married folks fall into. Except we weren't married. Not really. Were we? "Cale likes you," she said without looking up. "He's a good kid. He lost his parents 2 years ago. Tuberculosis. He doesn't talk much anymore." I kept working the cloth down the barrel. Sometimes talking doesn't help. She paused in her grinding. "You lost someone too?" It wasn't a question. Daughter. Rose. Same age as Cale when she died. The only sound was the soft scrape of stone on stone as she worked. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "Me too." She stood up, walked around the fire, and placed her hand on my shoulder. Just for a second. Didn't say anything. Then she went back to her work. That touch stayed with me all night. By the end of the first week, Cale had become my shadow. We'd go out at dawn, tracking rabbits and deer through the high country. I taught him to read prints in the dust, to move quiet through the brush, to be patient. "Patience is half the hunt," I told him. "What's the other half?" "Knowing when to take the shot." On his third try, he dropped a rabbit at 30 yards with my old pistol. Clean shot, right through the head. He looked at me with eyes so full of pride and joy that I had to look away. "Good," I said, my voice rougher than intended. "Real good, Cale." He ran to me and hugged my waist, quick and fierce, then pulled back, embarrassed. "Thank you, Uncle Eli." "Uncle!" The word settled into my bones like it belonged there. When we got back to camp, Dahana was waiting. She saw the rabbit, saw Cale's face, saw something in mine. She didn't smile exactly, but her eyes softened. "You're good with him," she said later, when we were alone. "He reminds me of what I lost. Maybe he can remind you of what you still have." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. But the words stayed with me, burrowed deep. The days took on a rhythm. Hunt with Cale in the mornings, work around camp in the afternoons, evenings with Dahana, learning her language, her ways, her silences. She taught me Apache words, shosh for bear, cheel for plant, ni for earth. The language felt rough in my mouth, all consonants and breath, but she was patient. "Your accent is terrible," she said, but she was almost smiling. "Well, your coffee is still too weak." That got a real laugh, short and surprised, like she'd forgotten how. Little moments like that, they added up. Her hand brushing mine when she passed me food. The way she'd watch me work, like she was trying to figure out a puzzle. How she'd braid her hair in the morning light, and I'd pretend not to stare. Sexual tension thick enough to cut. On the seventh night, neither of us could sleep. The fire had burned down to coals, just enough light to see shapes, shadows. I heard her shift on her mat, restless. "Do you want to leave?" Her voice, quiet in the darkness. "Leave where?" "This life. Go back to your people." I stared at the wicky-up ceiling, watching the last smoke curl through the gap at the top. "Don't have people anymore. Lost them during the war." Silence. Then, "Your wife. How did you know I was married? You talk in your sleep sometimes. Call out names." I sat up, ran my hands through my hair. "Yeah. Martha. And Rose. My daughter." "What happened?" The words came hard like pulling arrows from old wounds. 1869. I was off fighting for the Union while fever took them both. Cholera. Came home to 2 graves and a house some neighbors had burned to stop the spread. I looked at the coals, seeing that house in flames, seeing everything I'd failed to protect turning to ash. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you're just not there when it matters. The partition rustled and Dahana appeared, wrapped in a blanket, sitting near the fire but not too close. Her face was lit red and gold by the coals. "My husband died in my arms," she said. "Soldiers shot him during raid on our camp. Not the big one at Camp Grant. A smaller raid before. They came at dawn, killed 6 men, took nothing. Just killed for killing's sake." Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped the blanket tight. I held him while the blood ran out, watched the light leave his eyes. He tried to speak but couldn't. Just looked at me like he was apologizing for leaving. For 2 years I wanted to follow him, to the spirit world, to wherever the dead go. Then those men trapped me, and I realized while I was bleeding in those rocks that I didn't want to die. I wanted to live, but I'd forgotten how. I looked at her across the dim space, really looked, saw the strength it took to say those words, saw the grief she carried like stones in her pockets. "Maybe we're both learning," I said. She smiled then, sad and small and real. "Maybe we're just 2 broken people too stubborn to stay broken." The way she said it, the way she looked at me in the firelight, made something shift in my chest. I wanted to cross that space between us, wanted to touch her face, her hair, wanted things I had no right to want. Instead I said, "Get some sleep. Morning comes early. Yes, it does." But neither of us moved. We sat there until the coals died completely and the darkness wrapped around us like a blanket. When I finally lay back down, I could hear her breathing on the other side of the partition. Slow and steady. Not asleep, just listening. I listened too. The second week started peaceful. Too peaceful. Like the earth holding its breath before a storm. I'd hunted a deer and brought it back to camp. Dahana showed me how to butcher it the Apache way, which cuts went to which families. The oldest got the best meat. Children next. Warriors last. Everything shared, nothing wasted. She was teaching me to tan the hide when Kaylee came running, his little sister Istas following behind. The girl was 8, all big eyes and shy smiles. She'd been scared of me at first, hiding behind Kaylee whenever I was near. But this morning Cale had brought her to meet me proper. "Uncle Eli," he said, "this is my sister. Istas." She peeked out from behind him, clutching a small wooden bird I'd carved for Cale days before. "That's a sparrow," I said gently. "You like birds?" She nodded, still not speaking. I pulled out my knife and a piece of pine, carved while they watched, shaving away everything that wasn't a bird. Took maybe 10 minutes. When I was done, I held out a rough owl. "For you," I said, "to keep the sparrow company." Istas took it with both hands, like it was precious. Then she smiled, and it was like sunrise breaking over mountains. "Thank you," she whispered. From that moment, those kids were mine, not by blood, but by something stronger, by choice. 3 days later, they took her. It was early morning just after dawn. 3 women and 2 children, including Istas, went to the spring for water. It was only 200 yards from camp. Should have been safe. The Comancheros hit them fast and silent. 6 men on good horses with Winchester repeaters. By the time the warriors reached the spring, they were gone, vanished into the rocks like smoke. All that remained was blood on the sand and a message carved into flat stone. Spanish words cut deep with a knife point. Devuelvan la viuda, o los vendemos en 3 días. Return the widow, or we sell them in 3 days. I translated for the elders. Watched Cocheta's face go pale. Watched Cale collapse to his knees, screaming his sister's name until his voice broke. The War Council met within the hour. 30 people crammed into the largest wickiup, voices raised, fear and anger mixing like poison. The young warriors wanted blood immediately, wanted to ride out, hunt them down, kill every last Comanchero in the territory. But Cocheta counseled patience. They have Winchester repeaters, he said, better horses than ours. They want us to attack. It's a trap. They'll kill our warriors and still have the captives. Then what do we do? A young warrior demanded. Let them take our children? Before Cocheta could answer, Dahana stood up. The room went silent. This is because of me, she said, her voice carrying to every corner. I'll go, trade myself for the children. No. Everyone turned. That was me, on my feet before I knew I was moving. Absolutely not. She looked at me with those dark eyes. You don't have a say, mountain man. Yeah, I do. According to your law, I'm your husband. So I got a say. Her face flushed with anger, but I kept talking, turning to Cocheta. Use me instead. I'm white. They can sell me to mines in Chihuahua, to ranches, wherever. I'm worth more than one Apache widow, more than children they'll have to feed and house until they find buyers. The room erupted. Arguments in Apache, too fast for me to follow. But I kept my eyes on Cocheta. He studied me for a long time. Then, this is dangerous plan. Give me 1 day, I said. 1 day to get those kids back. If I fail, you do it your way. What makes you think you can succeed? Because I'm bait they'll actually want, and because I don't plan to go alone. Understanding dawned in his eyes. A trap within a trap. He looked at Dahana. What say you, daughter? She was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. He's a fool, she said. Been called worse. She stood up, walked straight to me, got right in my face. Why? You don't owe these people anything. You don't owe them your life. No, but I owe you. And you'd die for them. So that's what I'm doing. Her hands grabbed my shirt, bunched the fabric in her fists. If you die tomorrow, I will be angry. Very angry. I'll try not to die then. But she didn't laugh, didn't smile, just looked at me with something raw and desperate in her eyes. For 2 years I felt nothing. Now I feel things, and I don't want to stop feeling them. I reached up, covered her hands with mine. I'm coming back. I promise. Don't promise. Promises get broken. Then believe. She pulled me down, kissed my forehead hard and fierce. Her lips were warm, trembling. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. Come back, Elijah. Then she turned and left the wickiup, left me standing there with my heart hammering against my ribs. Cocheta cleared his throat. We prepare, he said. 12 warriors, hidden in the rocks. You walk in alone, but you're not alone. Understood? Understood. That evening I checked my weapons, rifle, pistol, knife, made sure everything was clean, loaded, ready. Practical tasks to keep my hands busy and my mind from wandering to all the ways this could go wrong. Cale found me outside camp, where I was sighting in my rifle. Uncle Eli. His voice was small, scared. Are you really going to get Istas? I'm going to try. What if the bad men hurt you? Then the warriors with me will finish the job. He threw his arms around me, held on tight. Don't die. Please don't die. I hugged him back, this boy who'd lost so much already. Not planning on it, kid. When he finally let go, I pulled a brass cartridge from my pocket, the last one my father had given me before I left Tennessee years ago. Kept it all through the war, never fired it. I pressed it into Keel's palm. "For luck," I said. "You hold on to this for me. I'll come back for it." He clutched it like a talisman. "Promise?" "I promise." The night before the exchange I couldn't sleep. Just lay there staring at the darkness, thinking about all the people I'd failed. Martha, Rose, hell, maybe even myself. But this time, maybe I could get it right. Maybe I could save someone who needed saving. Maybe that would be enough to balance the scales, just a little. "Elijah?" Dahana's voice, soft through the partition. "Yeah? I need to say something. I'm listening." The partition moved and she was there, wrapped in a blanket, kneeling beside my mat. The wickiup was dark except for starlight through the smoke hole. "If you die tomorrow, I'll be angry. But I'll also be grateful that you tried." I sat up. "Don't talk like I'm already dead. I'm trying to be realistic. Try being hopeful instead." She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "I don't remember how to hope." "Then let me remember for both of us." I reached out, touched her face. Her skin was soft and warm. She leaned into my palm just slightly, her eyes closing. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Please come back." "I will." She opened her eyes, looked at me with something I'd never seen there before. Not just fear or gratitude. Something deeper. Something that made my chest ache. Then she leaned in and kissed me. Not on the forehead this time. On the mouth. Soft and desperate and full of everything neither of us could say. When she pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "Don't die, Elijah. Don't you dare." Then she was gone, back through the partition, leaving me alone with the taste of her on my lips and the knowledge that I now had something worth coming back for, something worth living for. Morning came cold and gray. I saddled my horse, checked my weapons one last time. The 12 warriors who'd ride with me were already moving into position, ghosts in the pre-dawn light. Cochetta approached, placed a hand on my shoulder. "You have courage, mountain man." Stupid courage, but courage. Coming from him, that was practically a blessing. I mounted up. Dahana stood near her wickiup, arms wrapped around herself. We looked at each other across the camp. No words. Didn't need them. Then I turned my horse toward the meeting place and rode into whatever came next. Part 3. When Wolves Come. The canyon where they wanted to meet was 5 miles from the rancheria, deep in country where the rocks turned red as dried blood and the shadows stayed cold even at noon. Bad ground for an ambush, which meant it was perfect ground for one. I rode in alone, hands visible, rifle left in the scabbard. The morning sun was just clearing the eastern ridge, turning everything gold and harsh. My horse's hooves clicked against stone, the only sound except for the wind moving through the junipers. They were waiting for me in the center of the canyon floor. 6 riders in a loose semicircle, Winchesters across their saddles. Behind them, huddled on the ground with their hands tied, were the captives. 3 women, 2 children. I could see Istas even at a distance, her small form pressed against one of the women for comfort. The man in the center sat tall in his saddle. Vicente Salazar. I'd know him anywhere from the descriptions. That scar across his throat, thick and ugly like someone had tried to cut his head off and failed. He wore a stolen cavalry jacket, Union blue faded to gray, with brass buttons that caught the light. He smiled when he saw me coming. The kind of smile a wolf gives before it bites. "You must be the fool everyone's talking about," he called out in English, thick with Spanish accent. The white man protecting the Apache widow. I stopped my horse 20 feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough to maybe survive if this went bad fast. "I'm here to make a trade." Salazar circled his horse around me, slow and lazy, looking me over like I was livestock. "Why should I trade? You're worth maybe 300 pesos to a mine boss in Chihuahua. The women and children? 500 total, maybe more. Why would I take less money? Because I know where Cocheta's rancheria is. I know where they keep their weapons, their food stores, their escape routes. Information like that is worth more than bodies. It was a lie, of course, but a good lie, wrapped in just enough truth to be believable. Salazar pulled his horse to a stop, considered me with those cold black eyes. You would betray them? The people who took you in? I'm a survivor. Same as you. Loyalty doesn't feed a man. He laughed, sharp and short. I like you, mountain man. You have the soul of a businessman. Behind him, one of his men shifted in the saddle. I caught the movement in my peripheral vision, tracked it without looking directly. Apache warriors teaching me to see without seeming to see. So we have a deal? I asked. Salazar stroked his chin, playing it out, enjoying having power over life and death. The sun climbed higher. Sweat started to bead on my back despite the morning cold. Maybe, he said finally. But first, I want to see if you're telling truth. Tell me something about the rancheria. Something only someone who lives there would know. There's a spring on the north side. Comes out of the rock face, never runs dry. They built the camp around it because water means survival. Salazar's eyes narrowed. Anyone could know that. The medicine man, Cocheta, keeps his weapons in a leather case under his sleeping mat. A rifle and a pistol he took off a dead soldier at Camp Grant. He doesn't trust them with the other weapons because they're too valuable. That part was true. Cocheta had shown me 2 nights ago, a gesture of trust I was now using as bait. Salazar nodded slowly. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, mountain man, we make trade, but we keep one child. Insurance, yes? To make sure you don't lie. No, all of them, or no deal. His face hardened. You're not in position to negotiate. Neither are you. Because right now, 12 Apache warriors have rifles pointed at your head. For half a second, confusion crossed his face. Then understanding. Then rage. I dropped flat off my horse and rolled left. The canyon exploded with gunfire. Muzzle flashes from the rocks like lightning. The crack and echo of rifles. The scream of horses, men shouting in Spanish and Apache, and pure animal fear. Smoke filled the air, acrid and thick. I came up with my pistol drawn, shot the closest Comanchero off his horse. He went down hard, didn't get back up. Another man was trying to aim at the captives, to use them as shields. I put 2 rounds in his chest before he could pull the trigger. The Apache warriors were everywhere and nowhere, firing from cover, moving between shots like shadows. They'd set the ambush perfect. Crossfire from 3 sides, no escape routes except straight up the canyon walls. A Comanchero spurred his horse toward the captives, rifle raised. Before I could react, an arrow took him through the neck. He toppled backward, already dead. Salazar was screaming orders, trying to rally his men, but it was chaos. Pure, bloody chaos. One of his riders made a break for it, got 10 feet before 3 bullets found him. His horse kept running, riderless, panicked. I ran toward the captives, firing as I moved, covered the distance in seconds that felt like hours. Cut the ropes binding the women with my knife, shoved them toward the rocks. Get to cover! Go! The women grabbed the children and ran. Istas looked back at me once, eyes huge with terror, before one of the women scooped her up and carried her away. Something hit me from behind, drove me to the ground. Weight on my back, a blade scraping across my ribs. Pain bright and sharp. I bucked, threw my attacker off, rolled to see a Comanchero coming at me again with a knife. He lunged. I shot him point blank. The blast threw him backward into the dust. My side was wet with blood, but I couldn't stop to check how bad it was. The firefight was still raging, smoke everywhere, the smell of gunpowder and blood and fear. Then I saw Salazar. He was off his horse, using it for cover, firing methodically at the rocks. Cool under pressure, trained soldier turned bandit. Dangerous. Our eyes met across 30 feet of canyon floor. He smiled, that same wolf smile. Raised his rifle. A shot rang out. Not from him, from above and behind him. The bullet took him high in the shoulder, spun him around. He staggered, but didn't go down. Tough son of a bitch. Another shot, this one from a different angle, caught him in the leg. He dropped to one knee, losing his rifle. I walked toward him, pistol aimed at his chest. Around us, the gunfire was dying down. Bodies on the ground, too many to count. Some Comanchero, some Apache. The price of justice, written in blood on canyon stone. Salazar looked up at me, blood running down his arm, his leg, still smiling. "You won't kill me," he said. "You're not a killer, not anymore." "You're right," I said. "I'm not." Then I called out in Apache, "Cocheta, he's alive!" The medicine man emerged from the rocks, rifle in hand, face painted for war. He looked at Salazar like a man looks at a snake that needs killing. "What do we do with him?" Cocheta asked in English. "We take him to Fort Apache. Let the U.S. Marshal handle it. Let their law deal with him." Salazar laughed, wet and painful. "White man's law doesn't care about Apache lives." "Then it's time we make them care," I said. 2 warriors came down from the rocks, bound Salazar's hands and wounds. Not gentle, but not cruel either, just efficient. He'd live to stand trial, assuming infection didn't take him first. I finally looked down at my side. The knife had cut shallow, more blood than damage. Still hurt like hell, though. I pressed my hand against it, felt hot blood seep between my fingers. That's when I heard her voice. "Elijah!" Dahana came running down the canyon, medical bag in hand, face twisted with fear. She'd followed us. Of course she had. Probably been watching from the rocks the whole time. "You promised," she said, dropping to her knees beside me. "You promised you'd come back." "I'm back, ain't I? You're bleeding, you fool." "Just a scratch." She ripped my shirt open, examined the wound with hands that shook just slightly. Then she started cleaning it, her touch somehow gentle and furious at the same time. The warriors were gathering the captives, doing a count. All accounted for, thank God. Istas ran to where Dahana was working on me, threw her arms around my neck. "Thank you, Uncle Eli. Thank you, thank you." I hugged her back with my free arm, felt her tears hot against my skin. "You're safe now, little one. That's all that matters." Cocheta approached, surveyed the battlefield. 4 Comancheros dead, 3 captured including Salazar. On our side, 2 warriors killed, 5 wounded including me. Not a victory you'd celebrate, but a victory nonetheless. "You fought well," he said to me. "Like Apache." "Fought like a man trying not to die," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" His eyes held something like respect. "You could have run. Could have let us handle this. Instead, you walked into that canyon knowing you might not walk out. Had to. Made a promise to a boy about his sister." "Ah, yes. Promises." He nodded slowly. "The white man's law says one thing. Apache law says another. But the law of a man's word? That is same everywhere." Dahana finished bandaging my side, tied it tight enough to make me wince. "There," she said. "You'll live. Though you don't deserve to. That your professional opinion, doctor?" She looked at me then, really looked, and something passed between us. Relief, anger, fear, something else I didn't have a name for. "Don't ever do that again," she whispered. "Can't promise that. Then promise you won't do it alone. That I can promise." The journey back to the rancheria took hours. We moved slow, wounded warriors riding double, captives weak from their ordeal. I rode with Dahana sitting in front of me, her back against my chest, my arms around her waist. Proper now, with the blood between us making it necessary. She leaned back into me, let herself be held. After a while, she spoke quiet enough that only I could hear. "I was so scared. When you went down, when I saw that man come at you with the knife, I thought, I know. For 2 years I felt nothing. Then you came. And now I feel everything. It's terrifying. I know that too." She turned her head, looked at me sidelong. "Do you? Do you feel it too?" "Every damn day." Her hand found mine where it rested on the saddle horn, laced our fingers together. "Good," she said. "Then I'm not crazy." "We're both crazy," I said. "Question is whether we're crazy together or crazy apart." She laughed, soft and tired. "Together, I think. Crazy apart didn't work so well." Back at the rancheria, the celebration was muted. Joy at having the captives back, grief for the two warriors lost. Life and death tangled up together, same as always. Cale came running when he saw us, Ista still in the warrior's arms behind us. The boy was crying and laughing at once, grabbing his sister when they lowered her down, holding her like he'd never let go. "You came back," he said to me, still clutching that brass cartridge I'd given him. "You kept your promise. Always will, kid." That night, the elders met to decide what to do with the captured Comancheros. Death would have been traditional, quick and final. But Cocheta argued for a different path. "The white man's law is coming," he said, "whether we like it or not. Fort Apache, the army, the marshals, they're here. We can fight them and die, or we can learn to use their law for our protection." Some of the younger warriors argued against it. Said white man's law had never protected Apache, never would. Said we should handle our own justice. But Cocheta was persuasive, and the fact that I'd bled alongside them, that I'd kept my word, gave weight to his argument. "We send messenger to Fort Apache," he decided. "Tell the marshal we have Vicente Salazar. Tell them we have proof of his crimes. Let them come, let them see, let them do their law." "And if they don't?" a warrior asked. "Then we do it our way," Cocheta said, "but we try their way first." 2 days later, a rider came back from Fort Apache. The marshal would come, would bring deputies, would take Salazar for trial, would require witnesses. That meant me, meant Dahana, meant riding back into a world of white faces and rules I'd been running from for 4 years. Dahana found me outside the camp, watching the sunset paint the rocks red and gold. "You heard?" she said. "I heard. Will you go? To testify? Will you?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of their eyes. The way white people look at me. Like I'm less than human." I turned to face her. "You're the strongest person I know. You stood in that trap for 3 days. You survived losing your husband. You're a healer, a medicine woman, someone your whole community depends on. If anyone can face down a room full of white people and make them see the truth, it's you." She smiled, sad and small. "You have too much faith in me." "Just enough," I said. "Just exactly enough." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell sage in her hair, wood smoke on her skin. "What happens after the trial?" she asked. "After they convict him or don't? After the white people go back to their fort and we come back here? What happens to us?" "I don't know. Never been good at planning past tomorrow." "Me neither." She reached up, touched my face, traced the line of my jaw with her fingers. "But I want there to be an us. I want that very much." "So do I." "Then that's enough for now." She kissed me then. Not desperate like before, not rushed or scared, just simple and honest and real. When we pulled apart, she was smiling. "Come on," she said, "dinner's getting cold, and if you burn the tortillas again, I'm revoking your cooking privileges." I followed her back to the wickiup, to the life we were building from the broken pieces of our pasts, to something that felt, against all odds, like home. The night before the marshal was due to arrive, I couldn't sleep. Lay there thinking about everything that could go wrong, about courts and lawyers and systems designed to fail people like Dahana. But I also thought about Kaylee's smile, about Istis being safe, about Dahana's hand in mine and the way she looked at me like I was worth something. Maybe justice wouldn't be perfect. Maybe the system would let us down. But we'd try. We'd stand up and tell the truth and hope it was enough. And if it wasn't, well, we'd cross that canyon when we came to it. "Elijah?" Dahana's voice, soft through the darkness. "Can't sleep?" "No. Too much thinking. Me too. Come here. She moved through the partition, lay down beside me on the mat. Not touching, just close. Her warmth in the darkness, her breathing steady and sure. Whatever happens, she whispered, we face it together. Together, I agreed, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I fell asleep without ghosts waiting in my dreams. Just her breathing beside me and the hope, fragile and new, that maybe the future didn't have to look like the past. Maybe two scarred souls could become whole again. Maybe that was enough. Part 4. Smoke and Wisdom. Marshal Harrison Blackwood arrived 3 days later with 4 deputies and a wagon for prisoners. He was 45 years old, lean as a whip, with gray threading through his dark hair and eyes that had seen too much but still believed in something. He rode into the rancheria like a man entering a church, respectful, careful, hands visible at all times. Cocheta met him at the edge of camp, and they spoke for a long time in the shade of a cottonwood while the rest of us waited. Finally they shook hands. White man's custom and Apache custom all at once. The marshal walked over to where we'd been keeping Salazar tied to a post in the center of camp. The Comanchero looked worse for wear, shoulder wound festering despite Dahana's treatment, legs swollen and hot, but alive, conscious, aware of what was coming. The other 2 captured Comancheros sat bound nearby, silent and defeated, watching their leader with hollow eyes. "Vicente Salazar," the marshal said, his voice carrying across the quiet camp. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, slave trading, and murder. You have the right to remain silent." Salazar spat at his feet. "Your law means nothing out here." "My law means everything," the marshal corrected. "Everywhere. That's the point of law." He turned to his deputies. "Load them in the wagon, all 3. Careful with Salazar's wounds. I want him alive to stand trial." Then he looked at me and Dahana standing together near our wickiup. "Mr. Brennan, Miss Dahana, I'll need you both to come to Fort Apache. Testify at the trial, 2 weeks from today." "We'll be there," I said. Dahana said nothing, just nodded once, but I could feel her trembling beside me. After the marshal and his men left with their prisoners, the rancheria felt different. Lighter somehow, but also heavier, like we'd passed some invisible line and couldn't go back. That evening, I found Dahana by the creek that ran through the valley, washing clothes in the cold water. Her hands were red from the cold, moving in steady rhythms that spoke of years of practice. I sat down on the bank beside her. "You don't have to testify," I said. "If you don't want to face those people, I can do it alone." She kept washing, didn't look up. "You think I'm scared. I think you'd be smart to be scared." She finally stopped, wrung out the shirt she'd been working on, laid it on a rock to dry. "When Nashota died, I held him for an hour before I let them take his body. His blood soaked into my dress, into my skin. I could smell it for days after, no matter how much I washed." She looked at me then, and her eyes were ancient. "I am always scared, Elijah. Every day I wake up scared. Scared the soldiers will come. Scared the slavers will return. Scared I'll lose everyone I love again. Fear is like breathing now. I don't remember what it's like without it." She stood up, water dripping from her hands. "But I'm tired of letting fear decide what I do. So yes, I'll testify. I'll stand in that white man's courtroom and I'll tell them what happened. And if they don't believe me, if they let him go, then at least I'll know I tried. That's all any of us can do," I said. "Try." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Come, help me hang these clothes. Make yourself useful, mountain man." We worked in comfortable silence as the sun set, stringing wet clothes between 2 trees. Simple work, the kind that lets your mind wander while your hands stay busy. When we finished, she didn't go back to the wickiup right away, just stood there watching the last light fade from the sky. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "That I don't want this to end. This feeling. Like maybe the world isn't completely broken. Like maybe there's still something good worth holding on to." I moved closer, close enough to feel her warmth in the cooling evening air. It doesn't have to end. Everything ends, Elijah. You know that as well as I do. Maybe. But some things last longer than others. Some things are worth fighting for even when you know they won't last forever. She turned to me, studied my face in the dimming light. Is that what we're doing? Fighting for something? I think so. Hope so, anyway. She reached out, took my hand, laced our fingers together. Me too. The days before we left for Fort Apache took on a strange quality, like we were all holding our breath, waiting for something to break. I spent mornings with Cale, teaching him everything I knew about tracking, shooting, surviving in country that wanted you dead. He soaked it up like dry ground soaking up rain. One morning, we were tracking a deer through the high pines when he asked the question I'd been expecting. Uncle Eli, what happens if they don't convict the bad man? What happens if he goes free? Then we deal with it. Your way or my way or some way we haven't thought of yet. He was quiet for a while, reading sign in the dirt. I'm glad you stayed, he said finally. Glad you married Aunt Dahana. We're not really married, kid. Not the way white people think of it. Doesn't matter. You're family now. That's what counts. Out of the mouths of children, as they say. Simple truths that adults complicate. Yeah, I said. That's what counts. 3 days before we were set to leave, a stranger rode into camp. Old white man, maybe 60, with a beard like tangled wire and eyes the color of creek water. He was leading a pack mule loaded with supplies, and he moved like someone who knew his way around Apache country. The warriors stopped him at the edge of camp, rifles ready. But before anyone could get too nervous, I recognized him. Red Thornton, old friend from my Army Scout days. Hadn't seen him in 2 years, but he looked exactly the same. Time seemed to move different for men like Red, like they were made of something tougher than the rest of us. Easy, boys, Red called out in passable Apache. I'm looking for a stubborn Tennessee mule named Eli Brennan. He around? I walked out to meet him, couldn't help smiling. Red, what the hell you doing way out here? He swung down from his horse, grabbed me in a bear hug that made my still tender side protest. Heard you got yourself into trouble. Figured you might need a friendly face. How'd you hear? He grinned. News travels, son. Mountain man living with Apache, fighting Comancheros, about to testify against Vicente Salazar. Hell, that's the kind of story that spreads like wildfire. You came all this way just to watch me make a fool of myself in court? Came to stand beside you when you do it? His face got serious. Also came because Vicente Salazar killed a friend of mine back in '69. Took his daughter, 12 years old, sold her into God knows what kind of hell in Chihuahua. Been waiting a long time to see that son of a bitch answer for his crimes. Then you came to the right place. I introduced Red to Cochetta, who received him with the same careful hospitality he showed all visitors. Watched him, measured him, decided he was acceptable. Then I brought him to meet Dahana. She was grinding corn when we approached the wickiup, her hands moving in that steady rhythm I'd come to love watching. She looked up as we got close, wariness in her eyes until she saw me. Dahana, this is Samuel Thornton. Old friend. Goes by Red. Red removed his hat, nodded respectfully. Ma'am, Eli tells me you're the one who finally tamed this wild bastard. I could see her trying not to smile. Tamed is strong word. More like tolerated. Red laughed, big and booming. I like her already, Eli. Over dinner that night, Red told stories that had the whole camp laughing. Tales from his years as a scout, his time in Texas, the various scrapes he'd survived through luck and stubbornness. He had a gift for storytelling, for making hard times sound almost romantic in hindsight. But later, when it was just the three of us, his face got serious again. You know what you're walking into, right? He asked me. Fort Apache ain't friendly territory for Apache. And a white man married to one? They'll have opinions. Strong ones. Let them have opinions. Won't change what happened. Won't change what needs to be said. Red looked at Dahana. And you, ma'am? You ready for what's coming? She met his gaze steady. I've survived worse than white people's opinions, Mr. Thornton. Red. Just Red. And yeah, I believe you have. He pulled out a pipe, started packing it with tobacco. Salazar's got friends, you know. Other Comancheros, corrupt officials, people who profit from his business. They'll be at that trial. They'll try to intimidate you, discredit you, maybe worse. Let them try, Dahana said. I'm done being afraid. Red lit his pipe, studied her through the smoke. You know what, ma'am? I think you mean that. And I think that scares them more than any gun could. The night before we left, I found Cochetta sitting alone near the central fire, staring into the flames like they held answers to questions he hadn't asked yet. May I? I gestured to the space beside him. He nodded, and I sat down. You've done a brave thing, he said after a long silence. Not just fighting the Comancheros, but agreeing to face white man's law, to put your faith in a system that has rarely shown my people justice. Don't know if it's brave or stupid, maybe both, often the same thing. He smiled slightly. You know, when you first came to our camp, bloody and carrying my daughter, I thought you were just another white man. Running from something, hiding in the wilderness, using us for your own purposes. I was running from something. Yes, but you stopped running. That's what matters. You chose to stand, to fight, to become part of something larger than your own pain. He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky. My daughter was dying inside after Nashota was killed. I watched her fade day by day, becoming a ghost. Then you saved her body, but more than that, you gave her a reason to live again. For that, you will always be my son, no matter what any law says. The words settled into my chest, heavy and warm. Thank you, I said, for trusting me with her, for letting me be part of this. You earned that trust. Now you must honor it. Go to Fort Apache. Tell them the truth. Make them see us as human beings, not as problems to be solved or obstacles to be removed. I'll try. That's all I ask. We sat in silence for a while longer, watching the fire burn down to coals. Overhead, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human struggles, human hopes. Finally, I stood to leave, but Cochetta stopped me with a hand on my arm. One more thing, he said. He reached into his shirt, pulled out a leather cord with a bear claw hanging from it. This belonged to Nashota. He wore it when he died. Dahana kept it, but she wants you to have it now. I can't take this. You must. It's her way of saying you are worthy to stand where he stood, to protect what he protected, to love what he loved. He pressed it into my hand, closed my fingers around it. Wear it at the trial. Let them see you are not just a white man. You are Apache too now. Part of us. Part of our story. The leather was worn smooth from years of wear, the bear claw heavy and sharp. I slipped it over my head, felt it settle against my chest. I won't let you down, I said. I know. That's why I'm letting you go. When I got back to the wickiup, Dahana was still awake, sitting near the small fire. Cochetta gave you the necklace, she said. Not a question. Yeah. She nodded, didn't look surprised. It's right. He would have wanted you to have it. Your husband? She finally looked at me then. Nashota was good man. Strong, brave, kind. He loved me the way young people love when they think they have forever. But you didn't have forever. No. She smiled sadly. We had 2 years. 2 years of happiness before the soldiers came. It seems like a lifetime ago now. Like it happened to someone else. I sat down beside her. Does it bother you? Me wearing his necklace? Being here in his place? You're not in his place, Elijah. You're in your own place. Yes, I loved him. I will always love him. But he's gone. And you're here. And what I feel for you is different. Not better or worse. Just different. She reached out, touched the bear claw where it lay against my shirt. Besides, she said with a slight smile, Nashota would have liked you. He always respected men who kept their word, men who stood up for what was right even when it was hard. Then I'll try to be worthy of his necklace. You already are. We stayed up late that night, talking about everything and nothing, about the trial, about what came after, about the life we might build together if we survived all this, about hope and fear and the strange alchemy that turns broken people into something stronger than they were before. Eventually, she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, and I stayed awake watching her breathe, memorizing the curve of her face in the firelight. Tomorrow we'd ride for Fort Apache. Tomorrow we'd face whatever judgment waited there. But tonight, in this moment, we had each other, and that was enough. When dawn came, gray and cold, we were ready. Me, Dahana, Red, Cochetta, Kaylee as witness, and 8 warriors for protection. We packed light, prepared for trouble, hoped for justice. The rancheria came out to see us off, old women touching Dahana's face in blessing, children hugging Kaylee, warriors clasping forearms with their brothers who rode with us. Istas ran up at the last moment, pressed something into my hand, the wooden owl I'd carved for her. For luck, Uncle Eli. Bring it back safe. I will, little one. I promise. Then we rode out, leaving the valley behind, heading toward a future uncertain and dangerous and absolutely necessary. Because sometimes you have to walk into the fire to prove you won't burn. Sometimes you have to stand up and speak truth even when you know the world doesn't want to hear it. Sometimes that's all you can do, and sometimes if you're lucky, it's enough. Part 5. The Covenant. The ride to Fort Apache took 3 days through country that changed colors like a woman changing dresses. Red rock gave way to yellow grassland, then to dark pine forests that smelled of resin and cold water. We rode careful, knowing Salazar's remaining men might be out there somewhere, hungry for revenge. The first day passed without incident. We made camp in a box canyon Red knew from his scouting days, a place with good sight lines and only one way in. The warriors posted guards while the rest of us ate cold rations and tried not to think too hard about what waited ahead. Dahana sat close to the fire, wrapped in a blanket despite the summer warmth. I could see her hands shaking slightly as she held her coffee cup. I moved beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched. "You all right?" She didn't answer right away, just stared into the flames like they held secrets. "I keep thinking about the courtroom," she said finally. "All those white faces staring at me, judging me, deciding whether my word is worth believing. Your word is truth. That's all that matters." "Is it?" She looked at me then, and her eyes were haunted. "Truth only matters if people choose to hear it, and white people have never chosen to hear us. Then we make them hear. We stand up there and we speak so clear and so strong that they can't ignore us. You have too much faith in their justice." "Maybe, but I have faith in you, and sometimes that's enough to start with." She leaned into me. Let me take some of her weight. We sat like that for a long time, listening to the fire pop and the night sounds of the desert. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called. Another answered. Red came and sat across from us, his pipe glowing in the dark. "You two remind me of my parents," he said. They had that same look, like they'd fight the whole world if they had to, long as they could do it together. "Your parents still alive?" I asked. Red shook his head. "Comanche raid in '48. I was 16. Came home to find everything burned, everyone dead. Spent the next 20 years angry enough to chew nails." "What changed?" He smiled, sad and knowing. "Nothing changed. I just got tired of carrying all that hate. It's heavy, you know. After a while it weighs more than anything else you're trying to carry." He looked at Dahana. "That's why this trial matters, ma'am. Not because it'll bring anyone back, not because it'll fix what's broken, but because holding men accountable, making them face what they've done, that's how we put down some of that weight. Even if it's just a little bit." Dahana nodded slowly. "I understand, but I'm still afraid." "Good," Red said. "Fear means you're smart. It's when you stop being afraid that you get stupid and dead." The second day, we almost didn't make it. We were threading through a narrow pass when the first shot rang out. The bullet hit rock 6 inches from my horse's head, spraying stone chips and the smell of sulfur. Ambush! One of the warriors shouted. We scattered, diving for cover behind boulders and scrub pine. More shots came, the crack of rifles echoing off the canyon walls. 6 shooters, maybe 7, positioned on the high ground above us. Comancheros. Had to be. Salazar's men, come to stop us from testifying. My rifle came up instinctively as I dove for cover behind a fallen log, returning fire. Beside me, Dahana had her medical bag and her own small pistol. Not much, but better than nothing. Stay down, I told her. Let us handle this. She gave me a look that could have melted steel. I'm not a child, Elijah. I can fight. And she did. When one of the Comancheros tried to flank us from the left, she saw him first, fired twice. Didn't hit him, but made him duck back behind cover long enough for one of the warriors to get a better angle. The firefight lasted maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. Bullets whining through the air, the smell of gunpowder thick and choking. Red took a shot that grazed his arm, barely slowed him down. One of the warriors caught lead in the thigh, went down hard, but kept shooting. Then, as quick as it started, it was over. The Comancheros broke and ran, disappearing into the rocks like ghosts. We'd killed 2, wounded at least 1 more based on the blood trail. But they'd made their point. We weren't going to Fort Apache unopposed. That night we made camp early, tended wounds, tried to settle nerves. The wounded warrior, a young man named Sella, was in bad shape. The bullet had hit an artery. Dahana worked on him for 2 hours, hands steady even when his blood soaked into the ground around her knees. Finally, she sat back, exhausted. He'll live, if infection doesn't take him. We need to get him to Fort Apache, to a real doctor. You did good, I told her. Better than most doctors I've seen. She looked down at her bloody hands. This is all I know anymore. Blood and wounds and trying to keep people alive long enough to see tomorrow. That's not nothing. That's everything. Cochetta came over, knelt beside his daughter, placed a hand on her shoulder. You have your mother's gift, he said in Apache, then repeated in English for my benefit. She could heal what others thought was beyond healing. You are the same. Dahana's eyes filled with tears. I'm tired, Father. Tired of fighting. Tired of losing. Tired of watching good people suffer because of bad men. I know, my daughter. I know. But we are almost there. 1 more day. Then we speak our truth. Then we let their law decide. And if their law fails us, then we have done all we could. That is enough. It must be enough. The 3rd day, Fort Apache appeared on the horizon like a wound in the landscape. Wooden walls, guard towers, the American flag snapping in the hot wind, symbol of everything that had taken from the Apache. And yet, our only hope for justice. We rode in slow, hands visible, no sudden moves. The soldiers at the gate watched us with suspicious eyes, but let us pass when I identified myself and showed them Marshal Blackwood's letter. Inside the fort, the world felt wrong. Too many straight lines, too many buildings crowded together. The smell of horses and unwashed soldiers and cooking food all mixed together in a way that made my stomach turn. I'd been living Apache long enough that white civilization felt foreign now. Marshal Blackwood met us at his office, a small building near the command post. He looked us over, noting the blood on our clothes, the fresh bandages. Trouble on the road? Comancheros, I said, tried to stop us from getting here. We handled it. Any casualties on your side? 1 wounded. He needs a doctor. The marshal nodded, dispatched a soldier to fetch the fort surgeon. An hour later, the doctor emerged from the infirmary, wiping his hands. The Apache warrior will live. Bullet missed the main artery by a finger's width. Lucky man. He'll need rest, but he can travel in a few days. Cochetta nodded, relief visible in his weathered face. Then he turned his attention to Dahana, removed his hat respectfully. Ma'am, thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy. She met his gaze steady. Where do we stay? Not in the fort, I hope. I've arranged rooms at the trader's post, just outside the walls. More private, safer. We'll need guards, Red said. Those Comancheros aren't done trying. Already arranged. 2 deputies, round the clock. The trader's post was a squat adobe building that smelled of leather and tobacco and old wood. The proprietor, a Mexican man named Diego, gave us 2 rooms on the 2nd floor. Small spaces with narrow beds and windows that looked out over the desert. Dahana stood at the window for a long time, staring at nothing. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "That I'm in a cage. These walls, this building. It feels wrong, like I can't breathe." "I know. Won't be for long. Trial's tomorrow. Then we can go home." "Home." She said the word like she was testing it. "Is that what the rancheria is now? Home, isn't it?" She turned to look at me. "I don't know anymore. Everywhere I've ever called home has been taken from me. The village where I was born, burned by soldiers. The camp where I lived with Nashota, destroyed. Now the rancheria, it's only a matter of time before they come for that too. Then we make a home that can't be taken. Not a place, a feeling. You and me, wherever we are, that's home." She crossed the room, stood close enough that I could see gold flecks in her dark eyes. "You really believe that?" "I'm trying to." She reached up, touched the bear claw necklace at my throat. "Nashota used to say that home was wherever the people you loved were breathing. As long as you could hear their breath in the darkness, you were home. Smart man, he was." She smiled slightly. "You would have liked each other. Both stubborn mountain men who think courage is the same as common sense." That night we didn't sleep in separate beds. Not because of passion or desire, though those things were there, but because neither of us wanted to be alone. We lay together on the narrow mattress, her back against my chest, my arm around her waist. Holding on, taking comfort in breath and heartbeat and the simple fact of not being alone. "What happens tomorrow?" she whispered into the darkness. "We tell the truth. And if they don't believe us, then we tried. That's all anyone can do." She laced her fingers through mine where my hand rested on her stomach. "I'm glad you're here. Glad I'm not facing this alone. You'll never face anything alone again. Not if I have anything to say about it." She turned in my arms, faced me in the dim light coming through the window. "Promise me something, Elijah. Anything. If something happens tomorrow. If things go wrong. If they try to take me. You run. You take Kayleigh and the others and you run back to the rancheria. You don't try to save me. That's not happening. Promise me." Her voice was fierce, desperate. I cupped her chin gently, met her eyes directly. "I can't promise that. I won't. You saved me in that canyon when you let me help you, saved me from being dead inside. I'm not abandoning you now, not ever. You stubborn fool, learned from the best." She kissed me then, hard and desperate and full of fear. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Don't die tomorrow," she said. "Please don't die. Not planning on it." She buried her face against my chest, and I held her while she shook. Not crying, just releasing all the fear and tension she'd been carrying. I held on tight, made silent promises I intended to keep. Whatever came tomorrow, we'd face it together. Morning came too fast and too slow all at once. We dressed in the best clothes we had, me in a clean shirt Red had brought, Dahana in a traditional Apache dress that Cocheta had packed. We were going to face white justice, but we'd do it as who we were. No disguises, no apologies. The courthouse was a wooden building at the center of the fort. Small, maybe 40 seats, already filling with people when we arrived. Soldiers, traders, curious townfolk from the settlement nearby. And in the back row, 6 men who looked like Comancheros. Hard eyes, watching us. Threats made silent but clear. The judge was a man named Morrison, 65 if he was a day, with white hair and eyes that had seen too much frontier justice. He banged his gavel and the room fell silent. "This court is now in session. We're here to try Vicente Salazar on charges of kidnapping, slave trading, and murder. How does the defendant plead?" Salazar stood, his lawyer beside him. A slick man from Tucson named Whitmore, all polish and false smiles. Not guilty, Your Honor. These charges are fabricated by savages and the white men who bed them. The courtroom rippled with murmurs. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. Watch your language, counselor. This is a court of law, not a saloon. But the damage was done. The line drawn. Us versus them. The prosecutor, a young Army captain named Walsh, called his first witness. Red Thornton took the stand, told what he'd seen. The aftermath of the kidnapping, the captives tied and terrified, Salazar giving orders, Whitmore cross-examined, tried to poke holes, but Red was steady, unshakable. Just facts, delivered plain. Then they called Cale. The boy walked to the stand like he was walking to his own hanging, small and scared but determined. The bailiff had to get a box for him to stand on so the courtroom could see him over the witness rail. State your name for the record, Walsh said gently. Cale, just Cale. And what did you see on the morning of August 14th? Cale's voice was quiet but clear. He told about going to the spring with his sister and the other women, about the Comancheros appearing, about Salazar on his horse, laughing while children cried. He laughed? Walsh prompted. Yes. When my sister screamed, he laughed. Said she'd fetch a good price because she was young. The courtroom went silent. Even Whitmore seemed momentarily at a loss. Then Salazar himself called out, "The boy lies. Apache children are taught to lie from birth." Judge Morrison's gavel came down like thunder. "Mr. Salazar, one more outburst and you'll be gagged. Understand?" But the poison was in the water now. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand feeling every eye in the room, told my story from the beginning, finding Dahana in the trap, treating her wounds, the Apache law that made me responsible for her, the rescue of the captives. Whitmore came at me hard during cross-examination. "Mr. Brennan, you're currently living with an Apache woman, are you not?" "I'm married to her, according to Apache law, but not according to white law. According to the law that matters out there, the law of keeping your word and protecting what's yours. So you admit you're biased, that you'd say anything to protect these people. I'm biased toward the truth. That's all." Whitmore smiled like he'd won something. No further questions. Then it was Dahana's turn. She stood and walked to the witness stand like she was walking through fire. Every eye in that courtroom on her, judging, measuring, finding her wanting before she even opened her mouth. Walsh approached gently. "Ma'am, please state your name for the record." "Dahana, daughter of Cocheta of the Chiricahua Apache." "And what happened to you on July 19th of this year?" She took a breath, held it, released it. Then she began to speak. Her English was accented but clear. She told about gathering plants for medicine in the rocks, about stepping wrong, her foot landing in the trap, the steel teeth closing, pain like fire, 3 days waiting to die. Then this man came. She looked at me. Elijah Brennan. He could have left me, should have left me. It would have been easier for him, safer. "Why didn't he?" Walsh asked. She was quiet for a moment. "Because he has a good heart. Because he saw me as human, not as Apache. Just as human in pain who needed help." "And what happened after Mr. Salazar's men took the captives from your camp?" She straightened and her voice got stronger. "They took children, innocent children, my people's future. We had 2 choices, let them go or fight. We chose to fight. And this man," she gestured to me again, "he offered himself in trade, put himself in danger to save children who weren't his blood." Whitmore stood for cross-examination, that false smile still in place. "Miss Dahana, isn't it true that you have every reason to lie here today? That if my client goes free, he might come for you again?" "Yes. I have every reason to fear him, but I have more reason to speak truth. Because my people have been silent too long. We have watched our children taken, our land stolen, our way of life destroyed, and we have been told our words don't matter. that we are savages, that we are less than human. Her voice rose, filled the courtroom. But we are human. We love our children. We mourn our dead. We want justice same as you. And if this court cannot see that, if you cannot look at me and see a human being, then your law means nothing. The courtroom was dead silent. You want to know if I'm biased? Yes, I am biased toward life, toward protecting children, toward stopping men who treat people like animals to be sold. If that makes me a liar in your eyes, then I am proud to be one. She looked directly at the 6 Comancheros in the back row. But I am not lying. Every word I speak is truth, and you know it. Part 6. Truth and Tomorrow. The silence in the courtroom after Dahana's words felt alive. Heavy as stone, fragile as glass. Every person there knew they'd witnessed something rare. Not just testimony, but prophecy. Not just a woman defending herself, but a people declaring their humanity. Judge Morrison cleared his throat. The sound seemed too loud in the quiet. Does the defense have further questions for this witness? Whitmore stood there, his polished confidence cracked. No, Your Honor. Then you may step down, ma'am. Dahana walked back to where I sat. Her hand found mine under the table, squeezed once, then let go. She was trembling, but her face showed nothing. Stone and strength. The prosecution rests, Walsh announced. The defense called their witnesses. Other traitors who claimed Salazar was a legitimate businessman. A corrupt army lieutenant who testified the Apache were known liars. Men whose words smelled like coins and favors. But none of them had been there. None had seen what we'd seen. When it came time for closing arguments, Walsh kept it simple. Gentlemen of the jury, he said, this case is about whether we are a nation of laws or a nation of might, whether justice applies equally or only to those with white skin and money. 3 witnesses saw Vicente Salazar commit these crimes, a respected scout, an Apache boy who nearly lost his sister, and a white man who had nothing to gain by lying. The evidence is clear. The truth is clear. All that remains is whether you have the courage to act on it. Whitmore's closing was longer, full of rhetoric about the dangers of believing savages, about how the frontier required hard men to do hard things, but his words felt hollow, desperate. The jury retired to deliberate. Judge Morrison called a recess. We waited outside the courthouse in the shade of an old cottonwood. The 6 Comancheros had disappeared, which worried me more than if they'd stayed. Red stood watch while Dahana and I sat on a bench, not talking, just being. Cocheta approached, stood before us. Whatever happens, he said, you honored us today, both of you. Spoke with voices that carried truth. That's all ancestors can ask of us. Think they'll convict? I asked. He shrugged. White man's jury, white man's justice. But sometimes, even white men surprise you. An hour passed. Then another. The sun crawled across the sky. People drifted in and out of the courthouse, whispered conversations we couldn't hear. Finally, the bailiff emerged. Jury's back. We filed into the courtroom. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Dahana's hand found mine again, gripped tight. The jury foreman stood, an older man, weathered face, rancher maybe. He held a piece of paper like it weighed 50 pounds. Have you reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of kidnapping, how do you find? Guilty. The word hit like a physical blow. Someone in the back gasped. Salazar's face went white. On the charge of slave trading? Guilty. On the charge of murder? Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Shouting, cursing, the bang of Morrison's gavel trying to restore order. I looked at Dahana. Her eyes were closed, tears streaming down her face. Not sadness, relief. The kind that comes when you've been holding your breath for years and finally let it out. Order, Judge Morrison roared. I will have order or I will clear this court. The room settled, but the energy was electric, dangerous. Vicente Salazar, the judge continued, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers. This court sentences you to death by hanging, sentenced to be carried out in 3 days. Salazar exploded to his feet. This is a mockery. These people are liars, savages and savage lovers. Mr. Salazar, be silent or be gagged. But Salazar kept screaming, had to be dragged out by 3 deputies, still cursing, still threatening. His voice echoed down the hall long after he disappeared. Judge Morrison turned to us and his face softened slightly. "Ma'am," he said to Dahana, "on behalf of this court and the United States government, I apologize for what was done to you. No person should suffer what you suffered. I hope this verdict brings you some measure of peace." Dahana stood, wiped her eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor. But peace will only come when all men like him are stopped, when my people can live without fear, when justice is not surprise, but expectation." Morrison nodded slowly. "Wisely said, ma'am. Wisely said." Outside, we stood blinking in the afternoon sun. People crowded around, some congratulating, others glaring. The town was divided, lines drawn in the dust. Red clapped me on the shoulder, his weathered face creased in a rare smile. "Told you justice could surprise you, Eli. Take care of that woman, she's 1 in a million." He tipped his hat to Dahana. "Ma'am, it's been an honor knowing you." Then he swung up on his horse. "Got other trails to ride, but I'll be back to meet that baby of yours." He spurred his mount toward the gates, heading back to Texas, a man finally able to let old ghosts rest. Marshal Blackwood approached, removed his hat. "You folks did good in there, real good. But you should know Salazar's men are still out there, and they'll be angry. I'd suggest you leave Fort Apache soon as possible. Tonight, if you can manage it." "We'll leave now," Cochetta said. "No reason to stay." The marshal extended his hand to me. "You're a good man, Brennan. Not many would have done what you did, just did what needed doing. That's what makes you good." We gathered our things from the trader's post, saddled horses in the fading light. Every shadow felt like threat, every sound like danger. But we moved quick and quiet, Apache style. As we rode out through the fort gates, I looked back once, saw the American flag silhouetted against the sunset, snapping in the wind, symbol of so much promise and so much pain. Then I turned my horse toward home and didn't look back again. We rode through the night, putting distance between us and Fort Apache. No one spoke much. We were all too tired, too wrung out from the tension. But there was a lightness, too, a sense of burden lifted, if only partly. Near midnight we stopped to rest the horses. The warriors built a small fire while others stood watch. Dahana and I sat close together, shoulders touching. "It's done," her voice barely above a breath. "He'll hang. He'll pay for what he did." "Yeah. So why don't I feel better?" I looked at her. "Because justice doesn't heal the wound. It just stops the bleeding. Healing comes after." "How long does that take?" "I don't know. Still working on it myself." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I'm tired, Elijah. So tired, I know." "Me too." We stayed like that until the fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead. Then we slept for a few hours, curled together on hard ground, taking comfort in breath and heartbeat. Dawn came soft, turning the desert pink and gold. We rode on, pushing hard, but not desperate. By late afternoon of the 3rd day, we saw the rancheria in the valley below. Home. The word settled in my chest, warm and true. The people came out to greet us, wanted to hear everything, every detail. Kayla told the story best, acting out his testimony, making the younger children laugh and gasp. Already it was becoming legend. The day Apache stood in white man's court and won. That evening, Cochetta called a gathering. The whole rancheria assembled in the center of camp, fire burning high, stars coming out overhead. Today, he announced in Apache, then repeated in English, we celebrate justice. Not perfect justice, not enough justice, but justice nonetheless. Our voices were heard. Our truth was believed. This is rare gift. We honor it. He gestured to me and Dahana to stand. These two walked into white man's world and spoke our truth, risked their lives to be heard. Tonight we make their bond official, not by white law or Apache law alone, by the law of two hearts choosing each other. I looked at Dahana. Her eyes were wide, surprised. "You knew about this?" I asked. She shook her head. "My father keeps secrets well." Cocheta smiled. In Apache tradition, when two people prove their commitment through sacrifice and courage, no more ceremony needed. You already married in every way that matters. This just makes it official. He held up a leather cord, woven with beads and feathers. "This was your mother's wedding cord," he said to Dahana. "She wore it when she married me. Now you wear it when you bind yourself to this mountain man who fought beside us." Tears ran down Dahana's face. "Father, I'm not worthy. You're more worthy than you know." His voice was gentle. "Your mother would be proud. Nashata would be proud. I am proud." He tied the cord around both our wrists, binding us together. Two people, different blood, same path now. What the land witnesses, no one breaks. The rancheria erupted in celebration. Drums began, voices raised in song. People danced, passed food and drink. Joy spilling over after so much darkness. Kale and Istas attached themselves to me, one on each side. "Does this mean you're really our uncle now?" Istas asked. "Really, truly?" Kale added. "Really, truly," I confirmed, "which means you're stuck with me." They hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. Best feeling in the world. Later, when the celebration had died down and people drifted to their wickiups, Dahana and I walked to the edge of camp, stood under the stars, still bound by that leather cord. "So," she said, "we're married now. For real. Seems like. How do you feel about that?" "Terrified. Happy. More alive than I've been in years." She laughed. "That's good answer." I turned to face her, our bound wrists between us. I meant what I said in the courtroom, what I've been saying all along. You saved me, Dahana. Not just physically. You made me remember what it felt like to care about something, to fight for something, to be part of something bigger than my own pain. You did same for me. For 2 years I was ghost. You made me human again. "So what do we do now?" I asked. "We've got justice. We've got each other. What comes next?" She smiled, and in the starlight she was beautiful beyond words. "We live. We build something good here. We raise Kaylee and Istas like they're ours. We help our people survive whatever comes next. And we remember that every day is gift." She paused, then added quietly, "And maybe, if we're lucky, we start our own family. Children who are both Apache and mountain man, who belong to both worlds." My breath caught. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying it's possible. My cycle is late. Could be stress. Could be something else." I pulled her close, careful of our bound wrists. "Dahana, if you're pregnant, then we'll deal with it. Together, like we deal with everything." I kissed her then, under the stars, bound together by leather and choice and something deeper than either. When we broke apart, we were both grinning like fools. "Come on," she said. "Let's go home. Our home." We walked back to the wickiup, past sleeping families, past dying fires, past the life we'd built from broken pieces. Inside, she untied the wedding cord carefully, hung it from the central support pole where it would stay. Then she turned to me, and there was no hesitation in her eyes, no fear, just certainty. What came after belongs to us alone. But I will say this. For the first time since Martha and Rose died, I didn't feel like I was betraying their memory by being happy. I felt like I was honoring it, living the life they would have wanted me to live. Morning came with birdsong and the smell of breakfast cooking. I woke to find Dahana already up, moving around the wickiup with quiet efficiency. She saw me watching, smiled. "Coffee's ready. Tortillas are almost done. Get up, lazy husband." Husband. The word still felt new, strange and wonderful. We ate together, sitting close, not talking much. Comfortable silence of people who don't need words to communicate. Cale appeared at the entrance. "Uncle Eli, can we go hunting today? Like before?" "Not today, kid. Today I'm helping your aunt with the garden." His face fell. "But hunting is more fun." Dahana laughed. "Welcome to marriage, Elijah. Less hunting, more planting." "Actually," I said, "why don't we do both? Hunt in the morning, garden in the afternoon. Best of both worlds." Kaylee's face lit up. "Yes, I'll get my bow." After he ran off, Dahana shook her head. "You're going to spoil him." "Little bit." "Yeah." "And Istas?" "Her too. I'm an equal opportunity spoiler." She kissed my cheek. "You're a good man, Elijah Brennan, even if you are a terrible gardener. Still learning. We all are." The weeks passed into months. Summer faded to autumn, the air turning crisp and gold. The rancheria settled into its rhythms, hunting, gathering, preparing for winter. Life continuing despite everything trying to stop it. Marshal Blackwood sent word 3 weeks after the trial. Salazar had hanged on schedule, died cursing everyone who'd testified against him. His remaining men had scattered, some arrested, others vanished into Mexico. Justice served. Not perfect, never perfect, but served. Dahana's cycle never came. By October, her belly began to swell. By November, there was no doubt. A child, growing inside her, part me, part Apache, part mountain man, belonging to both worlds, maybe helping bridge them. Cocheta was overjoyed. "First grandchild," he kept saying. "First of new generation. Hope for future." Kaylee and Istas were equally excited, argued constantly about whether it would be boy or girl, what names we should choose. Istas voted for Rose if it was a girl. Cale wanted Nashota if it was a boy. Dahana and I decided we'd use both names, honor both the past and the future, remember where we'd come from while we moved forward. Winter came gentle that year. Light snows, cold but not bitter. We spent long evenings in the wickiup, Dahana's hands on her growing belly, mine covering hers, feeling the life moving inside her, miracle made flesh. One night, lying together in the darkness, she asked the question I knew was coming. "Do you ever regret it? Saving me that day? Staying? Everything that came after?" I thought about it, really thought. About the life I'd left behind, the loneliness, the guilt, the slow death of the spirit. About what I'd found here. Purpose. Family. Love. "Not even a little bit," I said. "This life, right here with you, it's more than a dead man like me ever deserved." "You're not dead, Elijah. You're more alive than anyone I know, because of you, because of us." She rolled over to face me, her belly pressing against mine. "Because we chose to live, to fight, to believe that broken people can heal each other." I kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, tasted salt and smoke and home. "I love you," I said. First time I'd said those words since Martha. They felt rusty but true. "I know," she replied. "I've known for a while." "When did you know?" "When you offered to trade yourself for the children. When I saw you walk into that canyon alone. I knew then. You were mine and I was yours and nothing could change that. Pretty sure I knew before that. Maybe when you laughed for the first time. Or when you taught me to make tortillas. Or hell, maybe when you looked at me in that trap with murder in your eyes." She laughed. "I really did want to kill you, but you didn't. And I'm grateful every day that you didn't." "Me too." We fell asleep like that, tangled together, his child between us, the future uncertain but no longer terrifying. People ask me sometimes, in the years that came after, if I found redemption. If saving Dahana and fighting beside the Apache somehow balanced the scales for the men I'd killed, the family I'd failed. I don't know. Redemption's not mine to claim. That's between me and God and the ghosts I carry. But I found something else, something maybe more important. I found a reason to keep living, a reason to wake up each morning and face whatever the day brought. I found family, not of blood but of choice. I found a woman who saw my broken edges and didn't flinch, who let me see hers. The baby came in early spring, a girl. Healthy lungs, strong grip, eyes that looked at the world with fierce curiosity. We named her Rose Nashata, honoring the dead, celebrating the living. Both worlds in one small person. Kayla and Istas were better helpers than I'd expected. Patient with crying, gentle with holding, already teaching her Apache songs, mountain wisdom, building the bridge we'd started. Cochetta held his granddaughter with tears streaming down his weathered face. "This is hope," he said. "This is proof we survive, that we continue." And we did. The rancheria faced hard times in the years that followed. Army pressure, forced relocations, disease and drought, and all the thousand ways the world tried to break Apache spirit. But we survived, adapted, endured. Dahana became known beyond our camp. Other tribes sent people to learn her healing ways. She taught them, generous with knowledge, believing that medicine belonged to everyone. I taught the young warriors how to read the white man's law, how to navigate the system that wanted to destroy them. Used my ability to move between worlds to help protect theirs. It wasn't perfect. We lost people, lost land, lost pieces of culture that could never be recovered. But we kept fighting, kept surviving, kept building something worth protecting. Now, sitting here in the evening of my life, watching my grandchildren play in the dust while Dahana grinds corn with hands gnarled by age and work, I think about that day in the rocks, the day I found her in that trap, blood on the sand, hate in her eyes. If I'd ridden past, if I'd left her there, if I'd chosen safety over risk, loneliness over connection, my own pain over her survival, where would I be now? Dead inside. Or just dead. Same difference, really. Instead, I'm here. Still breathing. Still fighting. Still learning. An old mountain man who found home among people he'd once been taught were enemies. Who discovered that humanity doesn't have borders, that family is chosen as much as born, that love is the bravest thing any of us can do. Rose Nashata is grown now, with children of her own. Some look Apache, some look like me. All of them beautiful. All of them proof that two worlds can meet and make something new, something stronger than either alone. Dahana's hair is white now, her face lined with years and wisdom, but her eyes are still fierce, still see right through me, still make my heart hammer like I'm a young man again. Some nights when the fire burns low and the grandchildren are asleep, she'll take my hand and we'll walk to the edge of camp, stand under the stars like we did that first night after the trial. "Do you regret it?" she'll ask. Same question, years later. And I give the same answer. Not even a little bit. This life, with you, is more than I ever deserved, but I'm grateful for it every damn day. She leans into me and we stand there in comfortable silence. Two old warriors who fought their way to peace. Two broken people who healed each other through the simple act of choosing love over fear. That's the whole damn story. Not pretty, not simple, but true. And sometimes, truth is the best any of us can offer. If you've got your own stories, ones you carry in the dark places, I hope you find what I found. Not redemption, maybe, not perfection, certainly, but connection, purpose, someone who sees your broken edges and loves you anyway. That's all any of us can hope for. That's enough. More than enough. It's everything.